Beth is here.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here with you.
Good morning, Mr. Secretary.
Good morning, sir.
Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
We know you're tight for time, so we'll get right into the meeting.
Excellent.
All right, so I want to thank our sponsors for today's meeting. By the way, I'm Chris Chikanovich, the chairman of the board of the American Shipbuilding Suppliers Association.
Nice
Good
to
to
meet
see
you
you again.
Thank you for your service to our country.
Thank you, sir. Class of 75 as an aside, so.
Oh my goodness, I won't hold that against you.
Okay, good. Look, again, thank you for joining us. I want to thank our sponsors, Elwood and Fairbanks Morse Defense, for sponsoring today's event. If you'll go to the next slide, our ASSA mission. We just wanted to let you know that our mission is to advocate for the American shipbuilding supplier base to ensure that it has long-term stability for supporting our national maritime system. Before you hear on the slide, you see our member companies. I won't go over all of them, but you can just see that we are around the country. So we have a really good industrial base represented as part of our organization. So let me jump into a little bit about this Secretary Del Toro. As I mentioned, he is the 78th Secretary of the Navy. He just came on board in August 9th of 2021. And I'll have a little bit of a shortened bio. As I always like to point out, he was born in Havana, Cuba, came to the United States, was raised in New York City in Hell's Kitchen. He did attend the Naval Academy, where he earned his Bachelor of Science degree in EE, which is fairly impressive. It was my biggest challenge. And then he was commissioned as a surface warfare officer on his graduation in 1983. He has a 22-year naval career, including a series of critical appointments and numerous tours of duty at sea, including being the first commanding officer of DDG 84. I know you surely would have liked to have DDG 83, but still a brand new destroyer is pretty cool.
Yeah,
had a lot of senior executive positions in the Navy and on the Hill. After he retired at the rank of commander, he founded SBG Technology Solutions in 2004. And as its CEO and president, he supported defense programs across a host of Department of the Navy issue areas. So career naval officer, small business owner, actually a large business owner when you look back at it. So I think he represents both of what we're trying to do here. He has his master's degree in space and engineering from the Naval Postgraduate School, National Security Studies, master's in affairs from George Washington, legislative affairs from GW. So, and then he is married, has 4 children and a granddaughter. So across the board, Mr. Secretary, you're one of us. We love having you, and we are honored to have you today. So with that, I turn it over to you, sir.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Chris. Much appreciated. And it's great being here with all of you. I really do appreciate the chance to join your annual meeting. And thanks to each of the great suppliers that were on the screen just now for all that you do to build and support our Navy. Obviously, as a small business owner, I have a very special appreciation for the work that you do. Oh my gosh, I see actually Sean O'Connor, my classmate, on the TV screen. That's a scary thing. If I knew he was going to be here, I might not have accepted the invitation, but I'm sorry, Sean. You know, I can't help but give you a little bit of grief. But last week, I attended the christening of one of our newest warships, the Carl 11, and what a great honor it was to be up there to christen the Carl 11, and the great 11 family. Got to meet all of them, and they were just thrilled. Obviously, there were many members of Congress that were there, and we simply had a great time. She'll be commissioned sometime early next year in the Boston area. But next week, I'm going to be in Boston aboard our oldest ship, the USS Constitution. And, the common thread that really joins these ships is the American ingenuity and the skill that built them. Men and women like those of you who you have in your small companies who make a huge contribution to our shipbuilding industry every single day. And very much, the Carl 11 itself reflects the work of the hundreds of suppliers, both big and small, employing thousands of workers across the country. And of course, I know from personal experience what it takes to build a ship. I spent, 3 years building the Bulkley, A year and a half was in the shipyard in Pascagoula, Mississippi, and a year and a half was sailing her on sea trials. And I remember showing up to the ship on my first day when she was nothing but an empty hull, and working with the shipyard workers and all of the small business contractors that came on board our ship. I had a very deep appreciation for the work that they did. I also ran a small business myself for 17 years, and being in the private sector. And I have a deep appreciation for the supply chain, the role that small businesses and medium-sized businesses play in the supply chain. It's incredibly important. And, and it needs to be an interconnected effort, right? It's not just about small businesses. It's all businesses sort of working together. It's important to have communication, transparency, and accountability at every chain, link in the chain. So my goal actually as your Secretary of the Navy is to continue to foster these true partnerships where we both understand each other's needs, the requirements, our limitations, our goals, what's working right, what's not working right, because we all have a common purpose in trying to be successful as we build our ships, our aircraft, our submarines, and everything else. And it's important to our shipbuilding industry, but it's also important to our global economy, without question. And our global economy and the self-determination of free nations everywhere actually depends on sea power. As you know, I'm talking here to the choir, but it's especially true in the Indo-Pacific, where the sea lanes and the international norms that sustain our global economy are deeply under threat. And I just gave a speech at the Forrestal Lecture at the Naval Academy, where I spoke in depth about this subject. I encourage you all to go look at it so that you can fully comprehend the sort of things that I'm talking about. And I'm about to take my first trip to Asia as well in mid-October, where I'm going to be traveling to Japan and Korea and several other countries as well, and meeting with their heads of navies and civilian leadership, talking about the importance of sea power and maintaining our lanes of communications open, talking to them about the challenges that they have, talking to them about the types of platforms that they're embracing and building, and the importance of interconnectivity amongst our navies. These are all incredibly important subjects that we have to touch upon. It's just so very important for us. But let me be clear with you on a couple of things that, as I come in as Secretary of the Navy, that I think are also important in terms of the industrial base. I do expect our vendors to manage costs, to be able to fight requirements creep and deliver on time and on budget. And it takes two to tango on that effort, obviously. There's a responsibility on the part of the government as well, too, for us to not foster that requirements creep. And I think that moving forward, it's incredibly important in a time of limited resources that we do actually put a tight control on requirements creep, and that you do everything that you can from within the industrial base as well, too, to be very open and transparent with us about the challenges that you face, delays that are sometimes caused, sometimes by natural causes and sometimes unnatural causes, including climate as well, which always has an impact on what we do. But it's having that open transparency, that open communications, so that we fully understand where the challenges lie, so that we can work together through these difficult challenges and come to a better place in terms of producing platforms that are, quite frankly, cheaper to operate. Some of that also involves the Department of the Navy investing more in piloting efforts before we decide to make a complete holistic investment in a particular platform and buy them in large numbers. It's important to pilot these technologies to make sure that they work, pilot the subsystems that go on our ships, for example, to make sure that they work in a land-based environment before we actually operationally deploy them is critically important. I grew up under the auspice of the Aegis weapon system implementation, basically, which was all about, testing a little bit, seeing how it works, making sure it works. And then once we're confident that a particular technology or a subsystem works, then we implement it in great numbers. And I think it's just so very important to do that. I'm also working with our contracting teams to eliminate waste from the process and to award contracts fairly and faster. It's incredibly important. I don't need to tell you how frustrating it can be sometimes for a small or a medium-sized business to be able to just implement a contract modification, for example, taking months to figure it out and have it implemented, delay in payments and all those sort of things. you do have a Secretary of the Navy that understands how complicated this process is, and I'm looking for ways to effectively and more efficiently be able to work through some of those sort of things, right? And then, of course, COVID-19 presents a challenge to all of us. We in the Navy now have been able to mandate, the entire Department of Defense have been able to mandate the vaccinations themselves. I'm proud to say that the Navy now has, close to 95% vaccination rate, which is just incredible. And we're going to close that gap even further. There have been new regulations that have been put out with regards to contractors and civilian workforce. I encourage everyone to take a very close look at those regulations and ensure that we implement them appropriately, and that we work with your workforce to come to a place that's a better place, so that we can ensure that there's full, as we say in the military, combat readiness for us to be able to accomplish our mission in a very safe sort of environment. So that's incredibly important as well, too. I also know that unpredictable funding sometimes makes it difficult for your companies to be able to plan, to hire, to invest. So I've been spending a lot of time on Capitol Hill as well, talking about the need for reliable and sufficient appropriations, talking about multi-year procurements when they make sense, when they may not make sense, but certainly where they do make sense. It's an incredibly important tool for us to be able to effectively use, both in the Department of the Navy, and also provides the sort of stability to the industrial workforce that's needed to be able to, plan years in advance and maintain a stable workforce that you could recruit to without the, the highs and the lows of having to change the strategy every year, which is incredibly important. Let me see, what else do I want to talk about? And of course, that has a direct impact on the supply chain as well, too. We're also making additional investments in the supplier base itself, focusing on 4 areas: addressing the risk in shipbuilding and repair, increasing and expanding the industrial capacities to meet our force structure demands, creating jobs and providing economic stability, and diversifying single source and fragile supply chains, which we know in the times of COVID have also been negatively impacted. When you look at the number of key suppliers that the Department of the Navy depends on, and I don't think it's a dynamic that's just structured that's impacted the Department of the Navy. The numbers of supplier of key parts essentially has dwindled dramatically over the course of the last 5, I would even say 10 years. So it's important to do that as well. We're also making major investments with our prime shipbuilder contracts themselves, which I think will benefit small businesses in every possible way. We're upgrading facilities to help delivery schedules, increasing test and qualification capacity to mitigate technical and schedule risk, upgrading capital equipment so that you don't have to face capacity constraints in production facilities, and establishing second sources for high-risk systems. And I've seen a lot of that firsthand in the shipyards that I have already visited. I've visited both public and private shipyards, and it really is amazing some of the transformational technologies that they're putting in place, that they're investing in, for example, to make their facilities far more smarter and efficient, to ensure that they've, the timing of the workers and how they come together to actually produce the product itself. It really has been extremely impressive to watch. So I will continue to fight for the resources that we need to prepare our Navy for strategic competition. It's been a major focus of mine, as you know. I talk often about my 4 C's, which is China, culture, climate, and COVID. And in preparation for what we have to do to deter China, I also talk a lot about how the strategy, I think, is in place largely for us to do that. But we now need the resources necessary to make that an effective strategy. And so it's very, very important. And to that goal, I've released my strategic guidance just yesterday. I spoke about it at the Naval Academy, as I said earlier. The guidance is centered on 3 main priorities. First is maintaining maritime dominance. Secondly, it's empowering our people. And then third, strengthening our strategic partnerships. And each of you play a very important role in those priorities. You're the ones that ensure that we maintain superiority of our ships at sea, You recruit and train the next generation of our industrial workforce, which is very important. I don't got to tell you that our industrial workforce is getting older and older. And so we've got to reach out now and start to recruit younger people out of our colleges. We've got to make it easier to actually do that. It's very, very important. And you build the effective partnerships across industry and academia, government, and our military. And I'm trying to look for ways that we can try to reduce the bureaucracy associated with some of the partnership building that I think is just critical for us to all be successful along that lines. So I look forward to working with each and every one of you. Together, I think we can challenge assumptions, we can share ideas, and most certainly keep the lines of communications open, which is why I'm here with you today. Let's work together for greater agility, adaptability, trust, transparency. It's so important to us. And let me know where I can help to help move things forward quicker, and so that we can, bring to bear more capabilities for our warfighters. So I close where I started in thanking you for your service to our country, to our industrial base. Everything that you do is a direct investment on behalf of the sailors and Marines that I'm so proud to lead. So let me stop there and open it up for any questions that you might have. Except
Mr.
from Tom.
Secretary, thank you so
Not a lot to
much.
ask
I
you.
really appreciate it. Your remarks are encouraging, and we want to thank you again. To my record, you are the first Secretary of the Navy to speak to us, so we are extremely honored to have you here. We know you're tight today for time, so with that, we'll get right into the questions that we have for you today. Dana Byerly from Elwood would like to propose the first question to you.
Mr. Secretary, thanks an awful lot for being with us today. But I'd be remiss if I didn't pass on a hello from Tom Sullivan over at the chamber. He wanted to make sure I said hi to you.
Oh, wow. You're a friend of Tom's?
Yeah,
Very nice. Tom's a great American.
there you go. Well, now to my question. The DASD industrial policy just recently posted to the Federal Register a series of questions. And one I want to come back to you with. One of the questions was, what can the government do differently to better address supply chain risk, vulnerabilities? And the point was made about critical components. Actually, you set this up very well in your remarks, talking about an empty hull. My concern is that we could build a ship and it could be more of a museum versus a combat capable warship if it doesn't have certain critical components. Critical components, most people want to define as some rare earth material or an electronical component. But people like Fairbanks Morse that makes engines, and ourselves that are making ship shafting would beg to differ. So, you could have a museum run the flags up the flagpole and it just sits there. So my question, Mr. Secretary, is what criteria does the Navy intend to use to define critical components?
Well, I don't know the exact answer to that, the technical answer to that, but I have some thoughts on the subject that I could share with you. First of all, museums are important too, by the way, but nevertheless, we certainly don't want our ships to become museums, sooner than they're prepared to do so. A critical component, quite frankly, is simple logic. It's a component that is not easily obtainable, right? Or that it becomes so expensive to build for whatever different reason. You think about some of the components on our nuclear powered ships, for example, right? Or those components associated with our nuclear reactors themselves. But we all know that on many other ships that aren't nuclear powered, that there are many critical components that are such because either they're very expensive, very complicated to build, or they're extremely expensive because there's only one company that builds them, because they're just not in demand across the marketplace, right? So there's multitude of reasons why they would be considered a critical component. I get that, I understand that, and I think that it's important to try to, grow the supplier base for critical components, but it's easier said than done, right? Because if there isn't a broad commercial marketplace for that particular valve that goes on a ship, that may not go on a commercial ship, well, then it becomes tougher to produce and not that many more suppliers are willing to produce it. So I think we have to get creative in other ways as well too, which I believe is also a challenge in terms of how we do, quality controls on our critical components, right? If you take a look at some of the valve components that go on a nuclear submarine or an aircraft carrier, or even some of our other ships, the quality control process, between the government and the contractor, I mean, it's an enormous project. I mean, it's enormous, and it goes beyond, reasonableness, I think, sometimes. I fully understand the need to ensure that the quality of that component is dead on, right? But boy, the paperwork, could fill up a whole room associated with the quality control on just one valve alone. I'm just using one small example.
Yep.
So, we ought to be able to employ technology in a better way so that we can expedite the quality control process on that. So that, for example, the back and forth that goes on between the government and the contractor gets expedited in a way that it takes less than 7 months to prove that, the materials that went into the development of the disc that went into the valve are actually sound, and the tests that were done associated with it are valid, and all those sort of things. So it's never going to get easy. This is complicated. I get it. But boy, let's put technology to use, whether it be AI or machine learning or whatever it is, to try to expedite the process a bit, so it doesn't take at least as long to get that that controlled part into the supply chain. Does that help a little bit?
Yes, sir. Thanks very much.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Our next question comes from Paul Roden from Fairbanks Morse.
Hi, Paul.
Hi, good morning, sir, and thank you for being with us. And thank you for your comments as well. My name is Paul Roden, and I work for Fairbanks Morse, which is the last remaining U.S. manufacturer of large, medium-speed diesel engines for large amphibs, carriers, and auxiliary ships. By law, Navy and Coast Guard ships must be built in the U.S., but the U.S. content requirement can simply be met by procuring materials for the hull and constructing the ship in the U.S. The remaining components for the ships, which is the bulk of our companies here for ASSA, can be met by foreign manufacturers, and that's often what the shipyards do in seeking the cheapest components for those ships. The reason for this is current acquisition programs are structured primarily to focus on, some would say exclusively, on the lowest acquisition cost and maintaining schedule, which often leads the shipyards to procuring these cheaper foreign components that are designed for commercial markets. Often these foreign companies aren't experienced with the stringent Navy operational and performance requirements, and sometimes those requirements are even waived simply to maintain cost and schedule, as is in the case with the current Polar Security Cutter propulsion engines. The Navy and Coast Guard lose out because the components don't perform as well or cost more to maintain over the life cycle. U.S. suppliers lose out because of unfair competition, and the U.S. loses because the industrial base shrinks and the supply chain becomes further vulnerable to China's aggressive attempt to dominate the shipbuilding supply chain towards their goal of becoming a naval superpower. Apologies for the long setup, but my actual question, sir, is Acting ASN RDA Stephanie announced recently that the Navy would be putting real teeth into making sustainment a part of the acquisition process. Do you believe also that this is a concern, and for the sake of our future industrial capability, that we should do something about this? And if so, are you planning to ensure that sustainment, commonality, and industrial-based concerns are critical factors in structuring acquisition programs? Thank you, sir.
Oh, thanks, Paul. I appreciate your question. Yeah, there was a lot of stuff in there.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries.
It's a very.
But let me begin by saying anybody who thinks that our ships and platforms are being built cheaply today, that's a misnomer. The cost of our ships are enormous. And we as a nation, this is a national security interest and an economic security interest for our nation, have to find a way to become far more competitive on the global market and the global marketplace. China today has 17 shipyards across China. They produced 20 ships last year. They're on track to produce another 20 ships this year. Now, I'm not arguing that, we should do what China does, because at the end of the day, they take advantage of what's essentially slave labor to build their chips, right? They only have to pay their people, $10 an hour, and unfortunately, the Chinese people probably, benefit being paid $10 an hour, but that doesn't make it equitable or right or moral or anything else. But having said that, they have this huge advantage, and yet we can't seem to build more than 10 ships a year. And it's largely because of the costs associated with that. And you take a look at Colombia and the enormous costs associated with it. Take a look at our aircraft carrier and the enormous costs associated with it. I'm a business guy. I'm a small business guy. I'm an entrepreneur. And I truly believe that competition is the key to success. And to me, my favorite word is balance, right? Balance. We have to find the right balance in order to bring down the cost of our ships, of our weapons platforms, so that we can then be more competitive on a global scale. Or otherwise, it just won't be affordable. And what good does that do the shipbuilding industry or anything else? I mean, we've got to get more creative in finding ways, for example, that the shipbuilding industry in this country can start getting back in the business of building commercial ships, right? And I know that that's, again, easier said than done. I'm not, making any light of it by any means of the imagination. But if we just put up our hands and say, well, we can't compete with China, we can't compete with Vietnam, we can't compete with all these other countries, and we don't look for other mechanisms and ways to get back in the business of it, we're going to be in trouble. I mean, I would argue we're already in trouble. So we have to, I think, creatively about how we build more affordable ships. And look, I mean, for the industrial base, shipbuilding industrial base here in this country, again, just playing a hypothetical here, wouldn't it be great to be able to, perhaps build or maintain your ships, have your workers, even go overseas, transfer that technology, build it somewhere else, employ greater numbers of folks in an international country with workers from your companies, for example, using American technology, right? I mean, it's export is what we're doing in some ways. So I think you just have to find the right balance, right? I mean, take a look at what's happening, with the AUKUS deal that we just struck, right? This is great for the American shipbuilding industry, no doubt about it. I mean, if you're Electric Boat, and the companies that build the actual reactors themselves, this is good for America, right? But it may mean that we may have to go to Australia and actually work with the Australians in Australia to build some of their ships in Australia and help them, right? So I think it's just finding the right balance that's the key to success. I'm not just a completely black or white guy. You got to have it this way or that way. The answer lies somewhere in between. I hope that's helpful in answering your
Yes,
question.
sir. Thank you.
And sustainment costs, to the latter part of your question, are critically important to the overall cost of any ship as well, too. We often tend to think about just the purchase price of the ship, but boy, it's those operation and sustainment costs that are getting also completely out of control. You look at the maintenance and operating costs associated with the LCS, for example. That's becoming a model that, quite frankly, is unaffordable to the Department of the Navy. And it has real impact in us being able to do other things, including readiness and modernization and things of that nature, that the industrial base also benefits from.
Excellent. And I think beyond that cost question is availability of parts. When our friendly nations can't supply them because they're not in our coalition, or they don't want to enter a particular area of the world, that's another critical component in the survivability and sustainability of our fleet.
I couldn't agree with you more. And just stop and think about the consequences of China actually invading Taiwan, that would actually have to the chip manufacturing industry, that has a direct economic impact, not just on our country, but on every other free country around the globe. It would be disastrous to our economy, not to mention the moral, the moral factor of a free democratic, Taiwan. But the economic impact would be disastrous. And I think that, we in this country, and I know that many members of Congress are looking at this, and the industrial base is looking at it. How can we bring some of that chip manufacturing industry that we've given up to many other countries, back into the country? I know that there are centers of excellences in New York and other places that are starting to gear up to sort of take some of that technology back in house, but that's going to take a long time to help us get there, right?
Exactly. Yeah, my personal, I've lived in Taiwan for years and was a senior executive there for defense systems for Lockheed Martin. So, I'm always interested in that area of the world and what we do going forward. So our third question comes from Carl Fisher from Thrustmaster and also founder of ASSA.
I like a guy named Carl. I like a guy named Carl.
Well, thank you, Mr. Secretary. Appreciate you coming today. I'm actually class of 77, so I join in your disdain for the class of 75. But I want to thank you for joining us this morning and for your commitment to strengthening the domestic shipbuilding supply chain. Your predecessors in the Secretariat have been extremely supportive of ASSA. From my initial discussion with Secretary Mabus, actually sitting on the couch to your right.
Get out of here. Move
Yes,
that
sir.
camera over so I can say hi to him. He's not in his pajamas, is he?
Oh, hell no, sir. But let me get on with the question then. We over the past years, we at ASSA have taken a very aggressive approach and focused on Buy America. Our concern has been the exclusion of the domestic industrial supplier base from previous legislative and executive actions. Previous Buy America legislation, even recent executive orders have addressed the Buy America issue, but unfortunately these efforts have not addressed the eroding shipbuilding supply chain. I recognize there are many facets to this discussion. I would like to get your perspective on expanding Buy America policy within the Navy, as well as exploring additional options for strengthening the industrial base.
Well, the policy, as you well know, is set by the federal government and OMB and the federal acquisition regulations and throughout the Department of Defense. So they are the guiding factors behind the policy itself. But look, I support Buy America policy. It's important for our industrial base, and it's important for our economy as well too. But again, I go back to the fact that I do believe in balance, right? And we have to be careful that we don't become so myopic and creating a situation where you're not able to expand the sale of products, American products overseas as well too. So it's about drawing that exact balance. I go back to the example I said earlier that, boy, I would love to be able to get into the business where the shipbuilding industrial base, we're building ships to sell across the entire world, right? And as you grow your market, as you increase your marketplace, right? That's where you really make your money. It's about increasing the marketplace. As a small business owner, that's where I was always focused. How are the different ways that I can increase my marketplace? Not just focus on the customers that I had at one given point in time, but how can I go well beyond that to increase the marketplace? How can I make my company more effective, more cost efficient, so that my clients or new clients that wouldn't even know about me would basically be attracted to me because I provided a better cost, price basically to be competitive. And that's how I think, you should give some thought to in terms of how can you become more cost competitive so that you can grow your marketplace.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. We know you're tight for time today, and we appreciate your time. Again, we offer our help to you. Please let us know whatever it is we could do for you as we go forward, because again, we consider ourselves part of your team directly. So anything you need, please just call on us. Happy to assist you in any way we can.
No, I appreciate it. And in closing, it really is the Navy Marine Corps team. This isn't about me as Secretary of the Navy. It's about doing what's the right thing to do for our sailors, our Marines, their families. This is the same approach that Secretary Mabus took when he was Secretary of the Navy. He cared deeply about our Navy in every possible way. I'm going to try to break Secretary Mavis's record of being the longest standing Secretary of the Navy in the history of time. I don't know if I'll successfully be able to do that or not, but I'm going to do my best job at it. And I want to again thank my dear friend Sean O'Connor, who's been a longtime friend of mine for many, many years as well too. And thank you for everything that you do for the industrial base, for our Navy, for our sailors and Marines. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
And if
you.
everyone will please hang on board, we're about to do the Founders Award. So if everyone could stay on board, we appreciate it. And I turn it over to Carl.
Okay, thanks, Chris. I appreciate it. And I want to thank everybody for joining today with our special guest. I unfortunately, I do have to correct Chris. We actually had Secretary Mavis at one of our briefings early in our tenure. So Chris
Okay.
on board at that point. This is the fun part of what I get to do every now and then. Occasionally in life, we are afforded the opportunity to say thank you and publicly recognize a person's efforts. Such is the case for me today. While many of you may be relatively new to ASSA, we've actually been in existence for 10 years this year. During that time, we've experienced the typical highs and lows of any organization. We have endeavored to provide a strong voice for our shipbuilding suppliers to the Navy, the Coast Guard, and Congress, and focus on issues of importance to our members. As you can imagine, getting a new organization started can be a challenge, but it becomes significantly easier when key members of the association step up to provide the unwavering and passionate support for the mission. Today, I get to both recognize and thank one of those very special people. Like the Thad Cochran Leadership Award that ASSA presents every year to a public official that is the strong advocate for the shipbuilding supplier industrial base, the ASSA Founders Award was established to recognize that member of the association that has made a significant contribution to our mission and to the shipbuilding community, has inspired others with their leadership and vision. Today, I have the honor and great pleasure of presenting the ASSA Founders Award to Mr. John West, President of Fox Valley Metal Tech of Green Bay, Wisconsin. John was one of our original members of the board of directors and has been an ardent and dedicated participant in the decision-making process throughout our existence, and his support continues to this day. He has helped guide us through various leadership transitions and has helped ASSA evolve as an organization now recognized for our strong support for our member companies, as well as for the entire domestic shipbuilding supplier base. He has done this while leading one of the country's premier manufacturing companies and beating cancer in the process. I want to personally thank John for his commitment to not only ASSA during the past 10 years, but also his lifetime commitment to the Navy shipbuilding community by providing high quality products that meet the requirements and by supporting organizations like ASSA that strive to improve the capability of the domestic industrial base. Due to the virtual nature of this meeting, this award is being presented to John at the Fox Valley Metal Tech facility in Green Bay. John, thank you for your tireless and dedicated service to the national defense.
Well, Carl, I'm honored to receive this award. It's a complete surprise to me, but I've enjoyed all my time in working with ASSA over the 10 years and being a part of the founding of the organization. Your leadership at the very beginning helped make this be a successful organization. It's gone through many transitions during that time period. And from what I see right now, I feel that the organization is at its strongest point that it's been since the beginning. And the addition of more members and diverse number of companies that are involved continues to grow. And I think that's a testament to the leadership that we have right now in the organization. So again, thank you very much. Very honored for the award. Again, a very big surprise to me. Appreciate it.
I'm going to slide in behind John because I actually have the award.
Yeah, I was just going to say the award is there in Wisconsin, so somewhere. I was hoping Kevin didn't run off with it.
There we go. Everyone can
But,
see the award.
We thank you, John, for your help and support, and continued best wishes to you and your family and your work family as well.
Thank you very much.
Hey, John, my personal congratulations. I've loved having you on the board. I love having you as a friend, and you've been a friend to me. My son, as he's come so along, and your guys have always been great. So I look forward to many more years together.
Thank you.
Congratulations again, well deserved.
Thank you, Chris.
So I open the floor to anybody else who has comments regarding today's meeting, or just in general, or to John. Unmute yourself and speak up.
Say congratulations to John, and then I wanted to take a moment to poke Paul in the eye because I was trying to write down the questions, and he really just killed me with his question to SecNav. So I did not write his question down.
Sorry, David. I'll send it to you by email.
No, it's cool. Of course, I think this went fabulously. Congratulations to your association for having SecNav. I think it went really well. Between Chris and Tish, we can put together a couple of questions, not like 100 questions, but if you have 2 or 3 that didn't get answered, I can run them up the chain as sort of a request for information, and see if I can get a response back.
Excellent. And
For those that,
Dave,
Chris, let
Can
me
we ask
interject here.
Dave a couple of questions?
For those that don't know, David Gornish has been a very strong supporter of ASSA. He works in DASN ships in the Pentagon. David, I forget your title off the top of my head, but
I got to make it up. It's some really
Okay.
long, ridiculous thing, but effectively, I'm a portfolio director for amphibs and auxiliaries, but I also oversee the shipbuilding industrial base and supply base for DASN ships.
And we want to thank you, David, for your personal support and the passion for which you do your job every day.
No, I appreciate it. I enjoy working with this group, and I enjoy the community. I came out of a shipyard myself. So, where the rubber meets the road is not paperwork at the Pentagon. It's where we put parts together and get stuff into the water, So I like it.
Hey, Dave, it's Tish Williams. I had a call from one of our members yesterday about vaccinations.
Yep.
Some of our members, obviously are federal contractors. And the question is, does that also apply to the subcontractors of the federal contractor? Does it go down to the
I do not want to propose that I'm an expert in all this stuff that has just literally unfolded, I think, in the last day or two. We just got something, I think 2 days ago, that said finally, so I'm looking over at my work computer. Let's see. Sign the attached memo on mandatory COVID disease. Nope, never mind. That's just for Navy civilian employees. I do not know. I believe that if you're if you're a subcontractor who's never on site at a facility, I don't necessarily know that would be applicable. But I'm not the belly button for that. I would think that the right way to figure it out is you go through your prime and figure it out that way.
Well, the secretary touched on it, so that's why I was wondering if maybe y'all had some intel on that.
Yeah, at the federal level, I'm sure you guys are following that we've all been either mandated to be vaccinated or weekly or biweekly testing. I don't really know. I don't have any preconditions or anything like that that preclude me from getting vaccinated. So I got vaccinated, so I just haven't been paying attention.
Okay. Just thought I'd see if you knew. Thanks.
Sorry.
I'll take it back to Chris.
And I'll correct, actually, when Paul sends you, he'll send it in 3 emails because you probably have a level of megabytes that you can get memory.
I'm going to hammer Paul about that for a long time.
Exactly. And for your information, I talked to Admiral Joyner. She wants to speak to us. So I'm not sure whether or not her team will be getting in touch with you, as SecNav did on the lawyers, determining that there's no conflict of interest. I assume it'd be a push of the button. SecNav just talked to us, so should she. So,
Right, yeah, so I mean, what the best thing to do would be to, you know, as you follow up with her, you can say, hey, a really good POC for this is David Cornish, right? So I won't do I'm not gonna pull from her organization, but if they tap me, then I'll make everything happen.
excellent. All right, good, good. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Easy
And
peasy.
Chris, we're proposing December 9th. That's been on our schedule
Right.
for our December meeting. And if that works out with her schedule, then we'll be sending out information to our members on whether or not we'll be meeting in person in DC or virtually to close out our year of meetings.
Okay. And for our members, Admiral Joyner is legislative, she's the Office of Legislative Affairs. That's her job. So working the Hill, which we try to do as well, is important.
Yeah, that'd be
Alright.
probably a good person to be connected with, you know, to, you know, as I've told Carl and Tish and Paul 100 times, you know, we can't advocate for a position. We can't, you know, advocate for a position or anything like that. But, you know, if you can figure out what OLA is, you know, if you can be on par with what OLA is saying, you know, you can either, you know, back it up or counter it, however, you know, just educates everybody.
Mhm. Yeah, you definitely don't want to be surprised on the Hill by saying, well, wait a minute, the Navy was just in here telling me you guys are wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
So. All right, excellent. Tish, we're missing anything else?
I think that covers it unless anybody has any other member announcements.
All right, with that, I raise my gavel. Any movement to end the meeting? Seconds? Oh, go ahead, Chris.
Thank you, everyone, for participating. I appreciate your support for ASSA, and those who aren't members, please join. Those who are, please stay active.
Get more members.
We appreciate your help.
All right, Cornish signing off.
All right,
Thanks
thanks a
again,
lot.
David.
Take care, all. Stay in touch. Right.
Well done, Tish. Well done, Chris.
Well done.
Thanks. Y'all send me your questions and we'll get those to Dave. Okay, thanks.